Holy City Sitter Radio is episode 142, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, July 5th, 2023. Well, it's the day after the 4th of July. Hope you had a fun holiday, whatever it is you chose to do. And I hope your neighbors didn't keep you up too late with fireworks. And if you have any pets, they got through the evening okay. I know it can be a little rough for, cats and dogs and such. Not a fun day for a lot of them. So hopefully everything went smoothly for them as well as for you. And getting back into work isn't too bad for you. I didn't do anything crazy. Just enjoyed some time with my family. Did some hot dogs on the grill. Very American of us, of course. And that's about it. Nothing too exciting, but it certainly beats going to work. Although here I am recording a podcast, but it's fun. I don't mind doing that. We've got lots of news to get to in just a moment, but first. I was finally able to start the new season of The Righteous Gemstones. Wanted to share that as I always talk about, like what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what I'm doing. But it also another reason I wanted to mention is, of course, The Righteous Gemstones is filmed in and around the Charleston area. Obviously, sometimes they go outside the greater Charleston area to record some things, but there was a lot. I think there's 4 episodes so far this season. It's, the same as the first 3 as far as the tone and the jokes and everything else, and it's been enjoyable. Good to see that whole crew back together. They've got some awesome guest stars this year, and as usual, you can see a lot of things, in the background, whether it's the North Charleston Coliseum standing in for their mega church or some other spots around the North Charleston area in particular that have been featured so far, including Riverfront Park, where there was a car chase that went through the park. And it's always fun seeing things in the background like, hey, I know that business. I think, what was it? Oh, the Ye Old Fashioned in Mount Pleasant was involved in a scene. It doesn't say Ye Old. They changed the names on a lot of businesses, but you can tell what it is. So it's always fun to be like, oh, I know that spot. Oh, that's where they recorded that. So that's part of the fun of the show as well, is just seeing all the Charleston area things. So been enjoying it. Certainly not a family friendly show, which I'm sure you all are well aware. But in case you hadn't watched it yet, keep that in mind if you're deciding to start it. Other than that, I've been trying to get back watching the old Indiana Jones films. As there is a new one in theaters that I intend to go see. I wasn't a huge Indiana Jones fan as a kid. I never really watched them until later in life. I don't know why, it just never really hit for me when I was a kid. The first one came out before I was born. The second one, I was, a toddler, I think. So that's probably part of it. But yeah, just never really got into it. They're good, fun films. And the first 3 anyway, as I've rewatched them. And the 4th one is up next. That was the one that came out in like 2008. I think I saw it back then. I think it was fine. I don't really remember it, but gonna rewatch that one, just for fun before going and seeing the brand new one out in theaters. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. I know, super thrilling, I'm sure, for all of you to listen to. But hopefully I'll have some more fun adventures for you coming up. But first, let's get into the news. All right. Unfortunately, the first couple stories are not good ones. The first one involves the North Myrtle Beach area. Unfortunately, I have to share the news that a pilot and 4 passengers in a plane crash have all died. It took place on Sunday, as I said, in the North Myrtle Beach area. The Horry County coroner officially announced their deaths. If you saw any of the pictures, now the pictures were far away. All you could see was a plume of smoke in the background. You couldn't tell what was coming from, but people were reporting it was a plane crash. It obviously didn't look good, and unfortunately, that was indeed the case. One of the victims was pulled from the wreckage, apparently still alive. They were taken to the hospital, but unfortunately, they did die a short time later. The identities of all 5 victims have not been released as of this recording, according to a report from the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA. They stated that the plane crashed under unknown circumstances after departing the runway at Grand Strand Airport. They are continuing to investigate this tragedy, and I will be sure to pass along any updates in future episodes. But for now, of course, thoughts and prayers with family, friends, and anyone affected by this tragedy. Another just horrible, unbelievably sad story that has been unfolding over the last few days up in Colleton County. So there was a fire that reports at first were saying, that there's multiple deceased people in the home. And of course, the thought was, they died in this fire, but it did seem strange. How do five people die in a fire at a house? No one attempted to get out. What's going on? And then you hear it's a murder investigation. And, the details started to come out that the people inside the homes were actually murdered before the fire started. They were stabbed, and then the fire was set. Well, thankfully, the suspect is already in custody, and he was in court recently. So the stabbing and fire incident took place back on July 2nd, which was Sunday. And the suspect has been charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder so far, anyway. That suspect is Ryan Leonard Manigo. He is 33 years old. He appeared in the Colleton County Courthouse for a bond hearing on July 3rd. He is the suspect, as I mentioned, in that stabbing and house fire that took place in the Green Pond community. In the end, 6 people died and 1 was injured. Manigo is facing 30 years to life in prison or the death penalty for the counts of murder. For the count of attempted murder, he is facing a maximum of 30 years in prison. On a press conference yesterday, or actually 2 days ago, when you're hearing this, the Colleton County Sheriff's Office said that 2 of the deceased victims have been identified, and they are believed to be the suspect's sister-in-law and his own daughter. They both died in the house from stab wounds, according to CCSO. The identities and cause of death of the 4 other deceased victims are pending an autopsy report, although another news organization has said that one of the other victims was 101 years old, which, this whole thing is tragic. A young girl is killed, all these other people, but also a 101-year-old, just senseless. She makes it to this age just to be murdered, allegedly, of course, I have to say, by this person, and just horrible. According to authorities, a 13-year-old female was the only surviving victim. She was treated for cut and stab wounds after providing deputies with the suspect's first name, description, and his vehicle, and that is how they were able to get him under arrest. 3 family members of the victims spoke during the bond hearing, and one said she hoped the suspect received a death penalty. If you see all the other stories, the family certainly was not mincing words about how they felt about the suspect, you know, saying things like he's evil, and just a horrible, horrible situation. And again, he will have his day in court. Um, but so we have to say things like allegedly, although it seems that this 13-year-old victim was able to identify him, and it seems he is indeed the one who did it. But again, he will have his day in court. Until then, though, just a horrific story. 6 members of the same family gone, and it's just unthinkable. So, just like the first story, thoughts and prayers with the family, friends, and the community, anybody who is suffering and struggling after this horrible story. All right, let's change gears a little bit here. I have to talk about the news. That's what I set out to do. And sadly, the news isn't always so fun and isn't always things we want to hear. But I do try to talk about some of the good stuff going on in the community as well. And thankfully, this next story is something that, is on the brighter side. And it involves friend of the podcast, Tyler Boone. Every time you listen to this episode, you're hearing Tyler's music in the intro and the outro. Sometimes when there's interviews and things like that, you'll also hear some segues that include his music. I know we haven't had an interview in a while, but when we get back to it, and I really appreciate him allowing me to use his music. And by the way, you can find him on all streaming platforms. He's under his name, and he's an awesome guitarist and singer, and I highly recommend you check him out. Well, he's coming back into town. As you know, he used to perform in Charleston. He eventually moved to LA. I had an interview with him in the early days of the podcast. We talked about his life out there in Los Angeles. He recently moved back to Nashville, where he spent some time, but he does come back to Charleston for performances and visits, and he recently announced that his second annual Holy City Homegrown Festival will be returning this year. You'll be able to catch it on Saturday, September 23rd at the Refinery in downtown Charleston. The event, just like last year, is going to feature live music from local musicians. This time around, in addition to Tyler, it's going to be stoplight observations, Little Bird, and more artists that are going to be announced soon. So you can keep your eyes open for that. Tickets are already on sale, and they do offer a VIP option, which will include a premium viewing area and a private bar as well. Definitely go check out those tickets. There's a link in the show notes. Should be a really fun event. September is a great time. The weather won't be so hot as it is right now. So if you're, going to see a concert outdoors, which the Refinery is, it won't be so oppressively hot. But should be a good time. Plus, you've got the Whale there, as well as Sweetgrass Vodka, and some other businesses will be there as well. Should be a really, really good time. One business is leaving downtown, but it is still sort of going to remain at the same time. What am I talking about? Well, the Post and Courier first reported that Baguette Magic, which is located at 73 Spring Street, was going to close on July 3rd. And they indeed did do that on Monday, but they are going to reopen the space on July 14th. It's just going to be a completely different concept. This time around, it's going to be a Filipino restaurant. The new concept will be called Cultura, and it'll be a partnership between chef Nico Cagalanan of Mansueta's Filipino Foods and Baguette Magic co-owner Paula Kramer. See, I told you that Baguette Magic is still involved a little bit. Yeah, it's not going to be the same at all, but you can, rest assured and be happy to know that it's not one of those situations where the business is completely gone. One of the co-owners is still involved in the new venture, and of course, they are going to continue to operate the original Baguette Magic location on 792 Folly Road, out on James Island. They also plan to open a new location in West Ashley next year. So you can look out for that in 2024. So not the end of Baguette Magic at all, but just the downtown location is switching out in favor of Cultura. You can learn more about the project in the Post and Courier's article. There's a link in the show notes. And you can also learn more about the project at Cultura, which is actually spelled Kultura, Charleston.com. Let's switch gears to sports now. Charleston River Dogs, who have won back-to-back championships, are having a little bit of a struggle this year, but they still have plenty of games going on. So number one, you should definitely get out there to the ballpark. Doesn't matter if the River Dogs don't win a game the rest of the year. It's always fun at the Joe. But they also have a special event coming up that's going to involve the USA Baseball Collegiate National Team. And they're going to be at the park on July 11th and 12th. They will be playing a team from Japan in the final two games of the 44th U.S. versus Japan Collegiate All-Star Championship Series. Pretty unique event. We're used to seeing the River Dogs at that venue, and sometimes some of the local colleges play there as well. But this should be pretty fun. A chance to be patriotic and go out there and cheer on Team USA as they take on Japan. And by the way, they recently announced their rosters, and the U.S. squad is featuring some players. If you're a college baseball fan, you may have seen playing during the College World Series. So link in the show notes will have more information and specifics as far as the rosters and things. So it's a chance to see some rising stars and some guys who played really well in college. And again, a chance to cheer on a team of Americans taking on Japan. So it should be a lot of fun. First pitch on both nights is scheduled for 6:30, and tickets are just $12. So a pretty inexpensive evening as well. So you and the family, you and friends can go out to the Joe on either evening and have a good time. So yeah, I think this is a pretty unique event, and depending on my schedule, I'm hoping to get out there. Maybe I'll see you. And our last story involves the Charleston Animal Society. They are currently offering a $5,000 reward for information that leads to a felony conviction after a young gray and white puppy, who, by the way, not even a year old, was left bleeding on the side of a North Charleston street back on last Thursday afternoon. Eyewitnesses told police they saw a blue Acura stop and abandon the dog as they then sped off on Hampton Avenue. Thankfully, some doorbell video captured the incident and is currently being reviewed by law enforcement, but they still need your help finding this person who left this poor innocent puppy on the side of the road. Not only did they abandon this young pup, but also left him injured. Both of the dog's ears had been severely cut, according to the Charleston Animal Society, which has left the poor dog mutilated, but thankfully doing well and recovering and in good spirits. And despite this horrific treatment at the hands of humans, the Charleston Animal Society says that this pit bull mix has been super friendly with the staff and, thankfully hasn't lost, his trust of humans in general. So, referring to the injuries, what they believe happened is someone attempted to crop, what they call crop, the ears at home. This is something, unfortunately, you see with dog fighting, that they do this to dogs' ears. And apparently, they attempted to do it at home and did a horrible job of it, leaving this poor dog mutilated. Part of the dog's right ear had to be removed as the cuts were just too deep to salvage it. Thankfully, no other injuries were detected in the examination of the dog. So, all things considered, thankfully, this dog is away from those horrible people, and I'm sure we'll find a loving and amazing home to live out what will hopefully be many, many more years of their life. So, if you know anything about this, and if you visit the link in the show notes, you can see, or if you just want to Google on your own, you can find stories from local media as well, who have posted some of the pictures of this car from the Ring doorbell camera. If you know anything of this person or the car looks familiar, please let North Charleston Police know. And if a felony conviction results from you providing that information, you will receive a $5,000 reward. You can call the North Charleston Police at 843-743-7200. That'll do it for this post-Independence Day episode of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back on Friday. If you could, please rate and review this podcast, like it, subscribe it, whatever you can do, please do so. It helps me out. And of course, subscribing, make sure it ensures that you don't miss any more episodes, as we have so many stories every single episode, so you don't want to miss out. You can also assist by going to patreon.com/Holy City Center to sign up for one of those support tiers, or you can go to holycitycenter.com/shop to pick up some merchandise. I also want to thank, as I mentioned before, Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode, and a big thank you to Cole Collins, who edits every episode of Holy City Center Radio, and this one may be a little bit of a challenge for him as I had some stumbles. You don't even notice. He makes me sound way better than I am, editing out all those mess-ups and flubs, and I appreciate him and Lindsay Marie Collins, who of course created LMC Sound System. As it is hump day, your week is almost over with the holiday. Hopefully you got some time off, and these last few days are just going to fly on by, and then it is time for the weekend. I barely have worked this week, but I'm already looking forward to it. How could you not? The weekend's the best, right? But until Friday, have a good rest of your week, and good night, and good luck.